Morning, Facebook world. Gosh, second live in 2 days. Who would have thought that? I did promise that I'd do a second live yesterday. Domestic duties got in the way of changing the world. I had a joke with my coaches about that. So did the live talk yesterday, and I just wanted to reflect on something that's really important. When you put out, whether it's video, or whether it's a live, or whether it's a live talk or content or whatever it may be, I just wanted to mention something that I think is really, really important, so that it kind of reinforces your pathway in terms of being a content creator. So first of all, it's really important to reinforce the brain that you actually enjoying the process. You're enjoying the process of whether it's speaking or creating content or whatever it may be. So one of the things after I did this live talk, it was about I did about a 45-minute talk yesterday with about 15 minutes of Q&A. And after the talk, I always like to give myself time to reflect on how did that feel, and just actually enjoy the feeling of being in that space. Because yesterday I was talking about presence and the importance of contribution, the importance of love, appreciation, and gratitude. And so obviously when I talk about that, it puts me in that energetic space. So I just give myself the gift of actually being able to sit in that space for a short period of time afterwards, just to really enjoy that and take it in. But there's something I do very, very deliberately, particularly after I do a live speech, and it's ask myself one question, which was, what was great about that? And the same with if I put out a video on Facebook or a post on Facebook, I always look at it, review it with fresh eyes and go, what was great about that? The reason is it's very, very important to reinforce a positive feeling around what you've done, regardless whether you fundamentally thought it was a bit of a car crash or it didn't necessarily feel good. It's really important to start with that question of what was great about that, because then obviously then the brain is saying, oh, actually this might have been an enjoyable thing, this might have been something that was good to do. So then you're much more likely to go on and do it again. So I always, and also when other my clients, when they're doing speaking or they're putting stuff out there, I always make them start with what was great about that. And if I give them feedback on their bit of content, I always say what was great about it first. So you must start with positive, because then the brain goes, I want to do more. After that, if you then want to look at, okay, what was the one thing I'd want to work on next time? So notice, like, I'm not saying what was wrong, I'm saying what do I want to work on? What would I want to work on next time? And often for me, there might be something that didn't quite feel right energetically or didn't flow as well. So I go, yeah, okay, next time I'm just going to do that differently. In this case, I've done this talk quite a few times. So in this case, really, what might I add or what might I do differently next time? I came from the Q&A. And there was a question around, how do I actually practically be more present? And my answer to that was, well, I use questions. I use questions in the morning, I use questions in the evening around, who do I love? Who loves me? What am I going to appreciate about today? What have I appreciated about today? What am I grateful for? What have I been grateful for today? Because it puts me in that space. So asking questions for me stimulates that brain to access that space of presence. So next time in the talk, I will probably mention that. So like some of you might be sitting there thinking, how can I be more present? Well, just ask yourself some great questions around love, appreciation, and gratitude. So that's that really. One final piece around why am I deliberately creating this kind of very deliberate and structured feedback loop for, in this case, speaking, but it really can be anything that you're putting out there. And it relates to something so some of you that have studied NLP or neuro-linguistic programming will be familiar with this, but it's something called meta programs, which are relatively hardwired behavior patterns where we tend to sort things in certain ways. And one of them is kind of a feedback approach. And it's whether you sort externally or internally. And there's a little bit more depth to it, which is, is my first check an internal, my first reference point an external or an internal point, or is it, and then what's my check? So I'll give you an example of that. If you're very new to something, or you might have just a general pattern, generally we will do an external thing. So if I was new to speaking, external, I want to ask the person that was teaching me speaking, was that good? Did I follow the instructions well, or the structure well? And you might then want to check with someone else that you trust to go, what did you think about it? How did you feel? Because like you're learning, so you're developing. So it actually makes sense to go external in that case. So I have an external reference initially, which might be my coach or mentor around speaking. And then I have a secondary check with someone that I trust as well. So I go external. And that's cool. That's cool initially. If you keep doing that, you're not actually really storing inside you, like, do I feel that's good? Does that work for me? Is that a good space for me? Because ultimately, if you want to persist in a new skill, whether it's speaking or whatever it may be, could be coaching as well, at some point you do need to check internally, is this working for me? So then external is very common in beginner phase, but some people get stuck in it. And then there are kind of two varieties in the middle, both of which can work, and we'll just talk about those a second. So the first variety is external reference. So again, you might go back to your mentor or coach and go, was that good? Did I follow the structure? Did I implement what we talked about? Or it might be feedback from the person that was hosting you and you were speaking, for example. Or it might be from the client if you're coaching them. External reference. And then the internal check afterwards would be, did that feel good for me? Because that's really important. Like, did this work for me? Because if not, you really need to think about how or why you're doing something. External reference, internal check. You can also get the flip of that. And then the flip of that is my most common space. Particularly when you've done this a few times, it's internal reference first, which is like, you know what, I came off that call. I felt really good. I really enjoyed that. Felt congruent with who I was as a person, felt energized about it. And then the external reference was, I got really great feedback from the person that hosted me on the call. I had some lovely comments from the participants in the thing. But that is secondary to that first internal check. It's not necessarily that internal than external is better than external than internal. I think both are useful. So did it feel good? And then just taking in the comments and the feedback. And it's like, that's a really nice space to be able to take that in as well. There's a final version, which is internal. You need to be a little bit careful with that, because it's like, did that feel good? And then your check is, did that feel good? Yeah, it felt good. The only challenge with that space, and that can be a very common space if you're very, very used to doing something, but it also can be a space that some people go to because actually they don't want external feedback, or it doesn't fit into their model of the world. You need to be careful, because that actually might restrict your ability to develop. If you're not able to take in external feedback at some point in the process, that can be dangerous, because then you can create an internal loop where, you've seen people that are self-deluded, right? So there is a danger there of being too much just solely internally referenced. So you can have these two extremes. The solely externally referenced is totally understandable in a beginner phase, but if you keep sticking with that, then you never get around to check whether it works for you. And totally internal reference all the way through means you might not be open to feedback and development. You could end up going on a spiral of self-delusion. So somewhere in between, whether you either have an external reference first or an internal reference first, and then you have to check the other way around, I think it's generally quite a useful way to approach both speaking, coaching, or anything you're doing where it involves interaction with other people, quite frankly. So I thought I'd share that. That is, for me, it's really important to start with what was great first, and then look for a one improvement. Don't go for more than that, because otherwise your brain can get super confused. So you just want to have one thing that you do differently next time you coach or speak or provide content, and then make sure you're having both external, internal references in terms of your own feedback and how you felt about something. I will see you next week, likely. I'm going to do some Q&A calls, as I said before. I'll be doing that at least weekly going forward, mainly on personal development, kind of life coachy stuff, some on business as well. Look forward to doing that, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the Facebook world in the future. Bye for now.